Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our regular Thursday live stream of Oh Yum 101, where I take the time to listen to you and make what you want to see me make, and we get really intensive about it. Now, over the last few sessions, your questions, your input has been incredible, and today's kind of a thankful Thursday. We've hit 750,000 subscribers. So I wanted to thank you, my loyal viewers, by giving you control over this Oh Yum 101. So I've got a crazy amount of ingredients ready. And there are different points throughout this session that I'm going to put it up to a vote. So you decide the flavor, the technique, what you want me to make throughout this whole session. And then when it's all finished up, all of your choices I will compile as a formal recipe so that when this live stream becomes put on the OEM site, you can go to the channel, look up the full recipe, and actually recreate what you made me do. So you're the executive pastry chefs. I'm the sous chef. We've already put it out to an initial vote as to what the crust would be. I'm making a sweet tart. And the reason I chose this as the foundation is because there are so many elements involved and so many decisions to make. The crust, the filling, two fillings, the topping, fruit, cream, textures, flavors, so much we can do. So, as you know, we put the vote for the type of crust between chocolate, graham cracker, and amaretti biscuit. And because I know you are this level home bakers, and hello to all of you who watch on a regular basis. Of course, I have to first say hi, mom, dad, meet you know. T's watching, Kathy's watching, Suzanne's watching, Bonnie's watching. So, all of you who love baking at home went right for the amaretti biscuit crust. Now, I am making a crumb crust for the base of this tart. That way, I can bake it for you. We can cool it in the time of this live stream. But I'm going to sneak in a bonus recipe. I am actually going to give you an amaretti biscuit recipe. So, I want to get the crust in the oven first so it has time to bake and then cool. And I will show you how to make the flourless amaretti biscuit that are the foundation for this crust. So let's start with the crust. I've got 1.5 cups of amaretti biscuit crumbs. So I already took some amaretti biscuits and just pulverized them until they're smooth. And really, any crunchy cookie will do. You want that crunchy crust and the crumb crust. But now, are you ready? It's time for your first decision. We're going to start adding a flavor accent. So you can choose between coconut and cinnamon that I add to this crust. A pinch of cinnamon or a couple tablespoons of sweetened flaked coconut. So which would you like to see? We will have lots of fruit options and creamy options and nut options as we build this tart. So I'm seeing coconut, 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 cinnamon, cinnamon. Oh, coconut's kind of leading the charge, isn't it? Oh, and Bonnie says coconut too. Yushan, I see cinnamon there. We won't be legal. You have a lot of choices to make. So, TJ, are we safe to say that coconut is the choice? Da, da, da. And yes, I have been to Quebec. We're going to go with coconut because I just see coconut after coconut on there. I can put, though, for those of you who wanted some cinnamon, just a pinch of cinnamon for that aroma and flavor. So I am loosely going to measure 3 tablespoons of coconut. That would be about 30 grams. This is sweetened flaked coconut. And I'm going to hold on to that because we may want to pull that up again to tie in our flavors. I mean, you are the executive pastry chefs, after all, creating this tart. I'll add my pinch of cinnamon, just a hint. And I'll set that aside. I'll stir that into my crust. And for 1.5 cups or 375 ml of cookie crumbs, you want to melt a 1/4 cup or 60 grams of butter. You don't need to add anything else. Just keep in mind the sweeter the cookie you start with, the crispier the crust at the end result. So if you're using something like a sugar cookie here, well, you may find it is a little bit sweet and crispy at the end. So that's why cookies like graham cracker, digestive biscuits, and amaretti suit this recipe so well. Just going to get in there with my hands. Make sure the butter is fully coating the amaretti biscuit. Now, the nice thing about an amaretti biscuit is it's by nature gluten-free. So if you are making this tart for someone who has a gluten allergy, it is a fantastic option, and it's got a great flavor. It's got that almond flavor. It's lightly sweet. It's very crispy. And just a reminder, I will be making the amaretti biscuit for you. But let's get this crust in the oven. This is a great base for a cheesecake too. And I saw before I started, someone wrote a note asking about the vote that went up this weekend, asking about the classic desserts. I will be coming back to that because we are taking that vote to heart. Get this out of the way. So when it comes to pressing a crust, I'm using a fluted round tart tin. It's got a removable bottom. I don't bother greasing the pan because you actually want the crust to stick a little bit. And I use the back of my spoon to first press the crust up the sides, and then I worry about filling in the bottom. There we go. So just a reminder, you are making the choices for me on what we're making. You picked the amaretti crust. Coconut won the first vote, but I did add a pinch of cinnamon because I think the two can work together. But the fillings and the toppings will really determine where this tart goes. And now I'm just going to pop this in the oven for 8 minutes just to set. That'll ensure it's nice and crispy. There we go. And that leaves me time to actually make the amaretti biscuit that were the base of this crust. Can I make amaretti biscuit in 8 minutes? We are about to find out. So if you've ever made French macaron, you know it's a combination of ground almonds, egg whites, sugar, and icing sugar combined together. Well, the Italian amaretti biscuit is actually made of the same components, except the recipe is far different. It's really all about the almonds and that almond flavor intensity. So to start off, I have 2 egg whites in my mixer here, and they're at room temperature now. And I'm going to whip them up and add 70 grams or a third of a cup of granulated sugar, and I'm going to whip that until it's a medium peak. So just as a note, I will be including this complete recipe as part of the tart recipe that you will see when it's posted later. You've probably heard me say this before. If you're ever concerned about over whipping your egg white, you can whip your egg white on one speed less than high, and it buys you more time to know you've whipped them properly. So now that this is starting to foam, I can slowly pour in my 70 grams or a third of a cup of granulated sugar, and I'll whip these to a medium heat. I've got a separate bowl. Normally I would fold the amaretti, the complete recipe in my mixing bowl where I whip the whites, but I may need this bowl again for another batch of whites, depending on the decisions you make. So I'm gonna keep this bowl just with the egg whites in it for now. In the meantime, I might as well talk about what I have here. I've got 120 grams, so 1 1/3 cup of ground almonds, and I've added to that 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. I also have 1 cup of icing sugar, and that's 130 grams. You don't have to bother sifting these ingredients. As a note, a third of a cup of sugar for 2 egg whites is a higher sugar ratio than a traditional French meringue. And so this will take just a little bit to whip up. We'll just give it a minute. It's nice and glossy. And these, believe me, are less fussy than making French macaron. Oh, we've got a question. Please make a tiramisu next. You may be able to pick some tiramisu flavors coming up, but we'll see. It depends on what everyone votes for. Actually, I should answer a question. There were a few questions before we started. One was, I believe it was Betty was asking about egg substitutes in recipes that aren't flaxseed based. And my favorite egg substitute is actually using silken tofu because it is a protein and it lends set to your recipes just the way an egg does. And so for every one whole egg, I measure out 60 grams of silken tofu, and you whisk it or puree until it's smooth and work that into your recipes. And it's amazing how it bakes up, especially in cakes. All right, so we've got some structure to our egg whites now. Fantastic. I'm going to set this aside in case I need it again. And it doesn't look like a lot of egg whites, but a little goes a long way because amaretti biscuits are even smaller than a traditional French macaron. They really are a dainty 1-inch size cookie. So now I'm going to combine my icing sugar with my almonds. I'll give this a little stir just to combine. And then I'll add half of this to the egg whites, followed by the remaining half. Now, you don't have to worry about the technical macaronage or special way of folding or double grinding your icing sugar and almonds here. You're actually looking to beat up these egg whites a little bit and soften them up so that they're easy to pipe. So now I just stir this in. And because of the amount of icing sugar, that 1 cup or 130 grams, you will find that as you stir, the icing sugar dissolves and melts, and it softens up this batter a little bit. Just like so. So before I add the second addition of the almonds and icing sugar, I'm going to add a splash of almond extract, that textbook Italian almond flavor. There we go. And now the remaining ground almonds and icing sugar. Now, just as a note to everyone, we've got my sweetie, Michael, behind the camera. And I smelled the almond extract I added, and I immediately thought of you, Michael, because I know you love that smell. Your mom used it a lot in baking, didn't she? Yes. And there we go. You can see it's dense and tight. It's nothing like a French macaron because it's got double the amount of ground almonds you might find in a French macaron recipe. Lovely. Okay. How's everyone doing? Oh, Michelle would love a lemon cheesecake recipe. Boy, it's like you're reading my mind, and I might have these ingredients on hand for you to put those in the tart. Let's see what everybody picks. I've got a baking tray ready, along with a piping bag with a plain tip. And I'll put this batter in. And I'm just going to pipe one tray. The remaining I can pipe later on. Now, what I would not recommend, if I may, is if you're thinking, well, why not spread this in the bottom of my tart shell and bake it like that? These cookies are best tiny and small so that they get super crispy. So if you were to press it in your tart shell, I'd be afraid that you would burn the outside before the sort of center of that crust would have a chance to set. Okay, and look at that, 1 minute left on my crust, and here I am piping my cookies. So I'll start at this end. And you just need, honestly, tiny little cookies. They will spread a little bit. I think I can fit 5 across. And these are the kind of cookie you would have with your espresso coffee just something to dunk into the coffee. You want it like a biscotti. You want it to be sweet and crisp and just a bit of a distraction. And in the case of this tart shell, it's going to lend that foundation flavor and crunch to the tart, because a good tart is about contrast in flavors and textures, as you're going to select for me. I'll pull this tart shell out. Lovely. Just to show you what's happening, it's lightly browned, just a little bit. I'm going to set it aside to cool. I'm going to lower my oven temperature to 300 degrees because that's the temperature. 150 Celsius or 300 Fahrenheit is what you bake the amaretti at. Thinking about what's next. Oops. Let me just move this out of the way for the next step, but I'll finish piping these cookies. After you finish piping your cookies, almost like macaron, but not quite, I do like to let them air dry just for about 10 minutes. I'll set the timer for that. This way, when you bake them, if you've ever seen amaretti, they have that nice little crackly crust on the outside. You're more likely to get that crackly crust. But unlike a French macaron, we're not looking for the foot, that little roughly sort of skirt at the bottom of your macaron. So see how many you get from that tiny bit of batter? A little goes a long way. Definitely enough for 2 full trays. But I will just do one now because we need to get you voting again for the next step. So I will just set these aside for 10 minutes to air dry and then pop them in the oven. And just to complete that amaretti story, after they air dry for 10 minutes, you put them in that 300 Fahrenheit, 150 Celsius oven for 20 minutes. So they really are crisping up all the way through. Let me make some space here too. So now we've got our cooling tart shell, and I will accelerate the cooling. After the next decision you make, I will pop this in the fridge to really start cooling it down quickly, because then when we start adding our cream fillings, we don't want those to melt. Okay, executive chefs, we want a nice texture, flavor, base filling underneath. So we're going to see this creamy top of whatever you pick to this fruit tart. Maybe it will have fruit, maybe you won't want to have fruit on it, but I want a little surprise layer underneath. So I'm giving you the option between a salted butter caramel. Now this is the salted butter caramel that I made 2 weeks ago when I did the salted butter caramel birthday cake. So you can find this complete recipe on that video, or I will make a quick chocolate ganache that will go at the bottom of this tart. So think, we've got the almond crust with the coconut, just a hint of cinnamon. Are you leaning towards caramel or chocolate? Let's vote now. Let's go, pastry chefs. What am I making? Caramel, 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 chocolate ganache. Caramel, caramel, caramel. Oh, hello, everybody. Oh, wow. This is a tough one. TJ, how are you feeling here? TJ is our channel manager. He's the one weighing in here. Oh, it could go either way. It really good. And just to let you know, either flavor will match well with the other choices going on. I'm feeling like the caramel is winning. Any notes from TJ, Michael?
Caramel!
Caramel's the winner! But you know what? I'm going to put the caramel in the tart, but I will show you the quick chocolate ganache. How about that? So thank you, chefs, for your votes. First thing I'll do, I'm going to take advantage of the tart being warm. My caramel sauce is chilled. So as a note, I took 200 grams or 1 cup of sugar, and I caramelized that. And then I stirred in whipping cream and butter. You always stir your whipping cream in first, and then you add the salt at the very end. And so this is cooling down quickly enough. Ooh, let's just let that do what it needs to do. A few more dollops. And I'm just gonna let the warmth of the tart warm up the caramel sauce. It'll also cool down the shell at the same time. But let's whip up the chocolate ganache, because if you wanted to put a nice thin layer of chocolate ganache at the bottom, all you need to do is heat up 6 tablespoons or 90 to 100 ml of whipping cream and have the same measurement by weight. So 90 to 100 grams or 3 ounces of dark chocolate chopped up and ready on hand. So we'll let that heat up. Oh yeah, my caramel, my crust is fragile because it's warm. So I will give you the instructions to let the crust cool fully, but we're accomplishing this live in an hour. So I'm going to be very gentle as I spread the caramel over the crust. It is definitely softening up. And what a lovely surprise underneath the tart once it's cut. And when you're making a chocolate ganache, that small measurement, 100 ml, heats up very quickly, and cream has a tendency to boil over. So once you see it start bubbling like this, you immediately take it off the heat, pour it over your chocolate, let it sit for a second. And then you let the hot cream do the work. And this is where I prefer using a spatula over a whisk to gently let the cream melt the chocolate and combine together. And then once you see it start melting, you can increase your stirring motion. And you can see it smooth, becoming smooth and thickening up. And of course, it starts cooling down immediately too. I think everybody's impressed with you, TJ, tabulating all those votes. It'd be easy if we had a polling system, but we're going arbitrarily. But now that you've seen the options, you will be able to actually create your own too, because now you've already seen how we can do the caramel and the ganache and see how it's got a beautiful richness. It's smooth and thick. While still fluid, you could pour this into your tart shell and then let it set and cool completely. I'm going to set that aside. I'm just going to make sure this tart shell isn't so hot. I am going to put it in the fridge to get it cooling down because we have our next decision to make. There we go. Nothing is around it, so it'll be fine. There we go. Now we've got the amaretti biscuit crust. We've got the caramel sauce, two things that you picked as the foundation for this choose your own adventure tart. It really is. Who knows what we're going to end up with at the end, but what I know is it's going to be delicious. So again, under a creamy layer, something custardy, cheesecakey, whipped egg mascarpone flavored and texture, I want to have another layer underneath. So this is where you have a choice between a fruit or a softened biscuit, almost like a cake. So the choices I am giving you for the next layer on this tart are simple poached pears or soaked ladyfinger biscuits. So both offer a nice soft texture. You don't want something crunchy in the middle of the tart. It might break up the tart when you slice into it. The poached pears are simply poached in a simple syrup with just a hint of lemon, and that's only to highlight the flavor of the pear itself. Or if I soak the lady fingers, they plump up almost like a sponge cake. So you're going to have a sponge cake layer. So I can go with pear or I can go with lady finger, and then I'll have you vote on the flavor of the syrup later. So Let's start the voting now. Pear or ladyfingers? Go. Oh, pear, 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 pear. Ladyfinger, ladyfinger, ladyfinger. Ladyfinger takes longer to type, doesn't it? Than pear. I can see that. Ooh, this is a tough one. Pear, pear, ladyfinger. Oh, gee. I'm almost. Is this going to be a tie? It feels like a tie. Okay, I get it. I love that people are just going, lady, 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 lady. That's hilarious. Okay, we're going with pears. All right. Well, just to let you know, you would have the option. Had you picked, this feels like a game show now. Had you gone with door number two, you would have had a simple syrup. This is equal parts sugar and water that you heat up until the sugar has dissolved. And I would have given you the choice between adding lemon juice and lemon zest to the syrup or coffee a la tiramisu style. But we're going with the pears, which I think against the caramel is elegant and sophisticated. And that is my timer to go back to the amaretti biscuits. Now that they've just had a little time to air dry, you can almost pick them up. They are that crusty on the top. They've got a bit of a crisp peak to them. So I'm going to pop these in the oven for just 20 minutes. I'm going to keep an eye because my oven was turned down from 350. It might take less time. In fact, I'm going to leave the oven door open to let it cool down. And let's set this for 12 minutes and I'll come back to those. Now, let's go back to this tart. That should be cooling down. Oh, definitely, definitely, definitely. So this is going to go in and out of the fridge a few times as we go along. So let me give you the quick lesson in poaching pears because I did want these cooled ahead of time for you. And pears poach beautifully. So the simple syrup I mentioned, equal parts sugar and water. For 3 pears, I got 200 grams of sugar and 250 ml of water up to a simmer on the stove. You could add, I do like adding a splash of lemon juice. It keeps the beautiful color of the pears. You could add flavor if you wanted to. You could add lemon zest. You could add a vanilla bean and let it infuse as it poaches. Now, a poach means you don't want to see bubbles breaking the surface when you're cooking your pears. And you want sort of a medium firm pear for the best poaching. Too ripe and it'll turn mushy very quickly. Too firm and it never really will soften up. And I find it takes about 10 minutes. And what you need to put on top of the pears is not a lid on the pot, but you actually either need to put a plate or a piece of parchment directly on the surface of the water because pears like to float and they might have their little round side peeking up above the water. So if you put the cover right on top of the pears, then the poaching liquid will just surf over the top of the pears and you won't get an unpoached part of it. So 10 minutes, and then I like to store them in the simple syrup. And now the simple syrup takes on flavor.
I think you've forgotten to close the oven door. They don't realize.
Oh, just as a reminder for everyone, my oven was at 350 to bake this crust. I'm cooling the oven down because my oven takes a long time to cool down. So I need it to be 300. If I were to close the door, it would actually burn the cookie. So I'll get to the oven door in just a second. Not quite there yet. It's still too warm. So now my pears, I'm going to slice because if I put a half a pear in the tart pan, it won't have enough space for the next thing you want to vote for. So I'm going to slice up a few pear halves now. So by cooking the pears in the simple syrup with that hint of lemon juice, they will always stay this nice light color. You could use in place of water, white wine or red wine. If you're using red wine to poach the pears, you want to make sure you soak the pears in that red wine syrup for a good day afterwards for that red wine color to soak through. Okay, now I can close that oven door. Yeah, there we go. So Now, we're not going to see these pears until the tart is sliced into. So it doesn't have to be preciously arranged, but you do want to take some care with how you're arranging it so that everyone gets a taste of the pear. So I'll just go around. But when you poach a pear, this makes a beautiful garnish for on top of a tart because you will retain this beautiful buttery yellow color from the pear itself and the simple syrup with a little bit of lemon juice. There we go. And I don't want to put pear in the center of the tart. And that is just for the practical reason that when I slice the tart, you want to get a nice perfect point. And if you have a big piece of pear right in the center, it might end up falling out and then you lose that beautiful slice. So I think that is sufficient for an accent flavor. Back in the fridge it goes. Set this aside. And now it's time for the next decision, my pastry chefs. Your sous chef is ready and waiting. Now it's time to pick the heart of this tart. And I'm giving you 3 choices now. So I'm going to bring them in front so you can see them. And then once you make this choice, then we're going to determine the flavor. So we want to come up with the texture first, the base element, and then we're going to, depending on what you pick, that will shape what the flavors are. So the first is a tiramisu style sabayon. So we would make a true sabayon, egg yolks and sugar and a liquid, whip that up to a certain consistency, then stir in. I have some delicious creamy mascarpone cheese, and then we'll whip some egg whites to make it nice and light and fluffy, and that becomes the base for that tart. And then there are some flavors that you can pick to go with it. You can also go with a more classic North American cheesecake filling. Now, this is a no-bake style of cheesecake because I wanted to make the start to finish in front of you. So I've got cream cheese softening up with some icing sugar and crème fraiche, and then you'll pick the flavor of cheesecake that will go from there. And lastly, the same Oh Yum 101 where I made the salted butter caramel sauce, I made a classic pastry cream. So I have already made and chilled a classic vanilla pastry cream that we can flavor. Now that's kind of a classic fruit tart filling. So you've got the rich sabayon mascarpone. Let's call it tiramisu. Tiramisu, cheesecake, or pastry cream. Which of these 3 do you want me to make, my executive pastry chefs? And I am at your command. Let the voting commence. Sabayon, sabayon, tiramisu, sabayon, cheesecake, cheesecake, cheesecake. Well, I think I can already pull away the pastry cream because I'm not seeing enough votes of that come through. So we're going to let TJ determine, is it going to be the tiramisu or is it going to be the cheesecake? Oh, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. TJ, I hope you had your coffee this morning. You've got a lot of work to do. I feel like it's the tiramisu, but we're going to let TJ weigh in on the final. Is tiramisu taking the lead? Or is it going to be cheesecake? We need our sports casters here who aren't narrating sportscasting right now. Are there, Michael, do we have any final word from TJ? TJ's got the final word.
Cheesecake.
Cheesecake. Here we go. Okay. Well, as I like to do, what you've missed. If you were to do the tiramisu filling, we would mix 3 egg yolks with a quarter cup of sugar, along with your choice of either lemon juice, rum for a traditional tiramisu, orange liqueur, or elderflower. And then once that is thick and ribbony, I would stir in the mascarpone cheese. And then from there, I would whip egg whites to lighten it up. But we can also have fun with the cheesecake at the same time. So I'm going to bring my mixer back because that's what we need for this particular recipe. And you'll have to forgive me. We're going to, I only have one glass bowl, so I will show you lots of what's happening inside this mixing bowl as we go along. Let me grab my beater attachment. Oh no, it's okay. I think I'm good. We don't need it for anything else now. So this is basically almost like a no-bake style cheesecake or a cheesecake mousse, and it leaves us with a lot of options for flavor, which I will present to you in the next vote. But let's get this mixing first. So I have a full package of softened cream cheese, and I do prefer using the brick cream cheese when making this. You need that density for this to set up nicely, because I'm not cooking it. I'm not adding gelatin or anything else to stabilize it. And just as a tip, since we're talking about cheesecake, over the weekend, we put the vote out of the top Oh Yum desserts. Which would you like me to do on Oh Yum 101 as an intensive hour-long lesson? And to let everyone know, and I think it might have been Betty was asking, could I make a cheesecake? Cheesecake won. So when you join me this time next week, I will go through everything you need to know about making a flawless cheesecake. This version is nice and simple. This is for the choose your own adventure tart you are designing by voting throughout this Oh Yum 101 live. So if you're just joining us now, we've got a tart with an amaretti crust, a salted butter caramel layer, poached pear on top of that, and we're going to add a cheesecake creamy layer on top of that. Ooh, I love the idea. Yeah, I really like where you're going with this, chefs, picking the caramel with the cheesecake. So the first thing I'm going to do is, of course, soften up the cream cheese, because regardless whatever type of cheesecake you make, you have to make sure that cream cheese is nice and smooth and fluffy. And the other thing that's required a whole lot when you're making a cheesecake is scraping down your bowl often. There we go. So I've got 1/3 of a cup of icing sugar. You don't have to bother sifting it. And I'm going to add that and beat that in. And this will dissolve into the cream cheese a bit and make it really nice and smooth. So the rest of the ingredients are easy to add. How's everyone doing? Good? Oh, have I tried making the burnt cheesecake, Sybil? Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to look into that, and I'm going to get back to you when we talk about cheesecakes next week. I will be posting. This is a good tip. Astudaporn is asking, could I please post the cheesecake recipe below? Anything that I am making for this complete tart, the recipes, including the amaretti biscuits, will be posted when this stream gets posted on the channel in a little bit. But you do just have to give me a little time to go and type everything up, because I'll document the choices you've made. I wouldn't normally keep taking it off the mixer, but I want you to see how this has smoothed out. Take a break and look at our amaretti biscuits. Oh, they went all poofy on me. Now I like to give the amaretti some nice color that I can tell. Here's a nice, let's make a lesson out of this. My oven is still hot. I can see it's running at 160 instead of 150. It's starting to brown on top, but see how they kind of poofed up and tipped over? That's because the oven was too hot. So it is important to make sure your oven is a lower temperature. But since these are being ground up to become a crust, we're not really fussing over what they look like. They sure smell good, don't they? You can smell the ground almonds toasting and the almond extract in there. Okay, back to our easy cheesecake filling. In addition to the 1/3 of a cup or 65 grams of icing sugar, you need to add a little bit of lemon juice. About a tablespoon is sufficient. And this is so the acidity from the lemon juice will thicken this cheesecake base without having to add eggs and cook it. There we go. And I will add a splash of vanilla. And this isn't the only flavor. You're going to pick the next level of flavor too. I think I'll use the mixer to smooth that out. And then I'm going to transfer this to a glass bowl, not for any technical reason, just so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. And that way I can move the mixer out of the way. And another vote is about to come your way once I get everything into the bowl. So right now, there's just the cream cheese, icing sugar, a little lemon juice, and vanilla in this cheesecake base. This isn't enough to put into a springform pan if you wanted to do a set cheesecake. This is really designed as a smaller recipe for the tart shell. But I do need to add some crème fraiche. Now, this is whipping cream that has been set to a sour cream style. Now, where sour cream is 14% milk fat, crème fraiche is like whipping cream, 35, even 40% milk fat. So you will find that it actually holds its shape, it's thick, and because of the acidity in it, plus the lemon juice, this is what actually sets the cheesecake filling inside the tart. So it stays nice and creamy, but you can slice it easily. Now, the last addition will be some whipped cream. But before we get there, it's time for you to vote on this cheesecake flavor. So, pastry chefs, we've got the almond flavor with the hint of coconut and the pinch of cinnamon in the amaretti crust. We have the salted caramel sauce. We have the poached pear. So that means in terms of flavor, I'm happy to enhance, where is it? Enhance the lemon flavor by adding some lemon zest, and I'll add a little more lemon juice just to bring up that lemon flavor. Lemon and almond with a bit of caramel. Well, I think that's a divine combination. Or would you rather get a little more adventurous? And this is a pistachio cream that I just made before we went live. And it is actually, I'll tell you once you pick the vote. So do you want the pistachio flavor or do you want lemon flavor in this creamy cheesecake filling? Remember, we've got to pair it with the pear, the caramel, and the almond crust. Voting now. Let's look. Oh, pistachio. Oh, well, I think this is an easy one. We'll let the voting continue a bit. Oh, pistachio's winning. You know what? You've just made my producer very happy because she loves pistachios. She says it's the TV friendly nut. Love that green color. Oh, hands down. TJ, do you agree? Pistachio? I just commend everyone for having either auto spell on or spelling pistachio while throughout this vote. Oh, for sure. For sure. We do have the hint of lemon flavor in there. And just to let you know how to make your own pistachio paste, because you can find it in fine Italian grocery stores, and it's a smooth, sweetened pistachio paste, as this is. So what I did was I took, and don't worry, I will include this recipe in the package because you picked it, so I better work it into the recipe. I just took a little chopper and with 1 cup or 100 grams of shelled pistachios, I blended that with 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. I didn't have pistachio oil. If you have pistachio oil, use it. It'll just amplify the flavor. You pulse that until it turns into a smooth paste. Then you add 1 cup or 130 grams of icing sugar and you pulverize that. A pinch of salt is nice. And this is the smooth and creamy pistachio paste that you end up with. So I'm going to start by adding a 1/4 cup. If you're making this at home, you would want to refrigerate this after you make it, just because of the richness, the natural oils and the pistachios they will spoil once they've been pureed like that. So you do want to refrigerate it once you've opened it. The store-bought ones, you don't have to, but it's that simple. 100 grams of pistachios, 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, 130 grams of icing sugar, and a pinch of salt. So I'm keeping an eye. This is a new recipe for me, you know. I haven't even made this. You had dictated to me. I am your sous chef at your command. Now I like the consistency. I'm feeling I need a little more color, and then I'll test for flavor. So that was about 2 tablespoons, and I think I'll go for another 2 tablespoons. I'll be honest, I'm really glad you picked the pistachio. I was hoping you would. And I think the pistachio against the pear and the almond will be absolutely divine. And I'm just going to check on my, there we go. Before I forget, we've got a nice light brown color. These are airy as could be. And I'm going to let these cool. And this will be the next crust I do. I'm just going to set them. I'm running out of space here. All these choices to vote on. There we go. Oh, they smell so good. Toasted almond. All right, we've got a nice pale green color there. Now, keep this flavor in mind because this is also going to shape the choices we make for the topping and the garnish. Oh, you made a really good choice. That is delicious. And when you have this paste, as opposed to just stirring in pistachios, oh, it lends such an intensity because the flavor has been really drawn out. Oh, that's good. Let me get this cleared. And now for a little bit of whipped cream. So about half a cup of fluid cream whipped. So that would be the equivalent of 1 cup of whipping cream. We'll fold that in. Now there is that lemon juice and the crème fraiche in there that will thicken this up. And if you don't have crème fraiche, you can make your own using whipping cream by adding a tablespoon of lemon juice or buttermilk to a cup of whipping cream. You put it in a bowl, you leave it on the counter, just like making a sourdough starter overnight, and it will thicken up. You chill it without stirring it, and you'll find there's a separation, and you pull away that crème fraiche from the surface. In a pinch, I would say something like Greek yogurt would work better than a lower fat sour cream or a non-fat sour cream, just because Greek yogurt has that set and structure and tartness that will set this. So I can actually feel how this is starting to thicken up, even just in the couple of minutes that I've been stirring it. Isn't that texture beautiful? That subtle green flavor. So let's grab our chilling tart shell. Spread the pistachio cream. If you really wanted to enhance the green color, you could add a bit of green food coloring paste, but I kind of like this natural, almost olive tone that real pistachio has, so I'm going to just leave it natural. That'll make it easier to spread. So you want to completely cover the pears. My gosh, look at what you're creating. This recipe didn't exist, you know. I just pulled out all the flavors to have ready depending on your choices. So you've really guided the direction of this. And if you're just joining us now, this is pretty crazy. We've got our viewers watching, voting on every step of this recipe, creating something altogether new. And this recipe will be posted after we stop the live stream. There we go. Okay, doesn't that look phenomenal? Now, I want to keep this tart chilling while we make the, we'll just keep going. I can feel this is setting up already. So let's make the next choice, which is topping this with a bit of whipped cream, and I can dollop it or I can pipe it. What do you think? Dollop and spread, or do we want to pipe? Do we want it to look sort of rustic and casual, or a little more polished? Okay, dollop or pipe? Let's make the vote. Pipe, pipe, pipe. Dollop, dollop. Well, that's an easy one too. Pipe is also easy to spell and quick. I think hands down, we've got piping. So I am all set here with a piping bag with a star tip. And I'm gonna go right into the next vote. And I think I know which way you're going to go based on the flavors you picked so far, because you have very refined tastes. You've got the almond biscuit crust, the salted caramel, the poached pear, the pistachio cheesecake. So your next choice, in addition to the whipped cream, is do you want to go with caramelized banana on top or mixed berries along with the whipped cream? Berries or banana? Oh, half and half. Well, no, we're gonna have to do uh one or the other. Berry, banana, berry, 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 bee. Oh, just like the piping, I think berries are the mix. And you know what? It does make sense. And I know you know this because you recognize that had we gone with more of a chocolate, coconut, richer style, that perhaps with the pastry cream with coconut, that would have suited banana with a caramelized flavor. But we've got this lightness, this elegance, this spring flavor and color going on with the caramel and the pistachio and the almond. So I agree with you that I think you made an excellent choice, chefs, picking the berries. So why don't we pipe the cream and put on the berries at the same time. And then it'll be time for the finishing touch. So you've had a lot of decisions to make. I think we're up to what, almost 7, maybe even 8 decisions. That's pretty impressive. Just as a note, this whipped cream has been just lightly sweetened, not much else added to it. I did put a little skim milk powder to stabilize it. And I know thought I had an extra piping bag. I'll be right back. I'm gonna have some whipped cream with a plain tip and some whipped cream with a star tip, just for contrast. And I was thinking to be a little more contemporary and do an arc of fruit as opposed to fully covering the tart with fruit. If you had different colors of frosting or buttercream, you could add it here. But I like that we're keeping it with a tart. I like that we're keeping it a little more natural. So I'm going to do just a few pipings. And we're going to just create a nice little banner or arc of the fruits all the way around. So I've got an assortment of berries, some fresh strawberries to lay in place. I like to put the biggest fruit on first because then that kind of gives you the guiding path where the smaller fruit or dollops of cream can fit in. How's everyone doing? And like so. Now we'll fill in with a little more cream. single dollops too. So we've got some contrast. And now some raspberries. They can be upright, they can be tipped down, however you wish. You just tumble or scatter them. This is really taking on a nice look and feel. I'm really glad you picked the berries. I think it's the perfect match for this pistachio cheesecake filling. I really think it's amazing. And everything will continue to set in the fridge. Ideally, I would give this tart a good 2 to 3 hours to set up before slicing into it. I think I can fill in with some more whipped cream now. Just a couple more berries to break it up. Might as well stack it high. Okay, we're getting on the home stretch. This create your own tart has been a lot of fun. I learned so much from you by your comments, your questions, your notes. It inspires me to create new recipes. And this really is my thank you to you for subscribing. There's so many of you now. We've really built a special relationship through this Oh Yum page, and it means a lot. As a note, because you already voted, we will make my signature New York cheesecake next week and walk through in detail every step to make just the most stunning and perfect cheesecake you can. But before we finish off, we've got the finishing touches. That bit of garnish. Now, I did have as an option praline, which is candied hazelnuts. And we can go for that, but we've already got almond and pistachio in here, and I'm wondering if that's the limit on the nuts. So we still have that as an option, praline hazelnuts, candied hazelnuts, or I've got butter roasted pistachios, pistachio dust. I'm not even going to put chocolate on the table. There's no chocolate in the tart, and now's not the time for it. And I do have some fancy Italian brandied cherries, which with our fresh fruit may not be a pick. So we've got icing sugar or butter roasted pistachios as an accent. And let's let the voting start now. Dusting, nuts. Dusting, nuts. Dusting, nuts. Can you tell which one I like? Pistachios? As a note, these pistachios were just roasted in a saute pan with a little bit of butter until they toasted up a little bit. Sprinkle of sea salt at the end. So thank you, everyone. You read my mind. We're going to go with a nice sprinkling of beautifully green salt roasted pistachios. I love the visual cue that seeing the pistachios on top tells you what flavor to expect in between. But we've got that beautiful surprise of the poached pear and the salted caramel underneath. So there we have it, a gorgeous fruit pistachio cheesecake tart. Isn't that amazing? You made this. This did not exist in my recipe repertoire. You guided me through it. I hope I shared some valuable tips. We learned how to make amaretti. We made the crumb crust, the cheesecake cream. I will be sharing all of these recipes, including the amaretti, all the crust, the pear, the caramel, the cheesecake component, and the pistachio cream on this feed. I'm going to let the cheesecake set. I'll take a gorgeous photo of it too, so you can see that too. I won't be able to slice into it right now. I know you desperately wish I could, and I desperately wish I could, but it just needs 2 hours to set up. And then I promise I will take a picture so you can see the beautiful pear and caramel underneath. This has been fantastic, but don't go yet. Don't go yet. Now, a reminder, we've got cheesecake coming, but I haven't had a chance. We've had all this time to do all the voting. I'd love to get a couple of questions. You've been asking me such fantastic questions. And I think with our cheesecake session next week, we'll really make it question focused. I've loved hearing from you with your votes, and I want to hear from you with your baking questions too. Oh, here's Wei is asking about an orange cardamom cake with a chantilly cream that she lost the recipe for, but that sounds delicious. Let me dig around in my repertoire and see if I can find something along those lines. Oh, and Jim says he's going to make this for his daughter's birthday. I think that's fantastic. Oh, Sagi, great question. What is the ratio for the skim milk powder to whipping cream when you're stabilizing your whipped cream? The amount is 1 tablespoon or 15 ml for every 1 cup or 250 ml of whipping cream that you whip. You can add it at the beginning of the process, or you can fold it in after the cream is whipped. It doesn't matter. Great question. Uh, oh, here's a request for a white chocolate fudge brownie recipe. I've been working on some white chocolate recipes, and you might find with the new series, I've got one. Yes, Michael.
Someone's asking if they can make their own crème fraiche. Could you give them a quick recipe?
Oh, yes. Okay, let's recap. The question is, can you make your own crème fraiche? You 100% can. If it's not available to you in the store, you need 1 cup of whipping cream, unwhipped. You stir in 1 tablespoon of lemon juice or buttermilk. You need that acidity. You stir it in, put it in a glass or non-reactive bowl, cover it, and let it sit at room temperature for 24 hours. In that time, the cream will separate and a natural buttermilk will settle in the bottom of the bowl. That's why I like to use a glass bowl. When you see that, you know you're good. Do not stir it because you just went to that work to separate it. You put it in the fridge, it will firm up the cream. That is the crème fraiche that you scrape off the top. And the little bit of buttermilk that's left, you'll find it'll just be a couple tablespoons. You can use in your baking or cooking or stir into your breakfast yogurt. So that was a great question to ask. And I will be posting the recipe. This is a great place to wrap up now. And is the question on, I'll recap how I made the pistachio cream, but you will find the recipe. Where did I put my pistachio cream? Ah, it's hiding. There we go. So to make pistachio cream, 100 grams or 1 cup of shelled raw pistachios. Puree that with 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil or pistachio oil if you have it until it's nice and smooth. Then you blend in, this is all in a food processor, 1 cup or 130 grams of icing sugar and a pinch of salt until it's nice and smooth. Once you've done that, you keep it in the fridge and it is delicious. Spread on your toast, or as we did here, worked into this stunning tart. Once again, thank you everyone for joining me this Thursday for Oh Yum 101. It's been great fun. I'm impressed with your skills, but you know what? We have worked together for how long through Oh Yum, baking and sharing together. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye, everyone.